What's good, y'all? My name is Dylan Green, and this is Real Notes, a space dedicated to blurring the cultural and artistic lines between rap and film. I'm here to chop it up with everyone from rappers and producers to journalists and video directors about their relationship to movies and how, if at all, film inspires their craft. My guest this week is Philadelphia rapper, writer, member of the Wrecking Crew, and co-host of the Callout Culture podcast, Zilla Rocca. We spoke about The Green Knight, Marvel Comics, the birth of superhero movies, the differences between seeing a movie in theaters pre-New Millennium and now, his relationship with Dr. Dre's The Chronic and Wu-Tang Clan's Enter the 36 Chambers, his beginnings as a rapper, growing the Wrecking Crew brand through music and podcasting, and his latest album, Vegas Vic. Come fuck with us. What's cracking, everybody? Welcome back to Real Notes. We've been back, I think, for about a week now because I took a 2-week break because people are tired. I've been doing this since March. I needed a break. So, my name is Dylan, CineMasai. I do a lot. I have names. Those are two of my names. Yeah. And we're here with somebody who's incredibly dope. And they took time out of their extremely busy schedule to come and chill and talk about movies and shit. We got fucking Zilla Rocca. We got Philly's finest in the house tonight. Tonight. It's the afternoon, bro. What am I talking about? Thank you for coming on my shit.
Not even real. Thanks.
Nah,
man.
it is.
It doesn't exist. It's just a state of mind. You know what I mean? Age ain't nothing but a number unless you're R. Kelly. Then it's a real number. It's an illegal number. It's an illegal
number. Yeah, very, very illegal number. Mr. Testify on his behalf in court. Fucking.
Oh God. Thanks for having me. This is great. I'm excited.
Oh, me too, man. This is hype.
Yeah.
I've been listening to Vegas Vic for the last couple of days, so I'm really excited to. I've been jumping around a lot, just like listening to some of your old stuff, and I peeped some of Callout Culture because shout out to you and Castro and Alaska.
Thanks,
so
man.
I'm excited to dig into all of this.
Sweet, let's get.
Hell yeah. So, first question I ask everybody who comes on is, what's the last movie or TV show you watched that you had a strong opinion about? It could be good or bad. It doesn't matter. But as long as it made you feel something.
The Green Knight. I really liked that movie. I really liked it. I had a strong opinion about it because it was, it made me remember how much as a kid, I loved knights and King Arthur and Camelot. You know what I mean? So, I'm 39, so I didn't grow up in this incredible wave of kid culture where everything you want is just out there. You just had really boring Greek mythology, King Arthur. There wasn't just to get a Batman toy was rare. You know what I mean? Now my son is just swimming in a world of there's Shazam toy, Captain America, Captain Marvel. I'm as an adult, I'm like, oh, this is dope. I always wanted this. So back then you just had literary heroes to hold you down, Gilgamesh. So watching The Green Knight, I was like, man, this reminded me how much I love knights with, the mace and the chain link shit and all that. And the movie, takes you, it's a little bit like Willow, where it's a little fantastical, a little scary, a little grimy, but also I watched it twice. I rented it. I should have seen it in the theater. I was bugging. But I just rented it. I was like, I don't want to wait anymore. I just want to see it. And I watched it back to back. And then I watched the director. What's Homeboy's name?
Damn, I can't remember either. I saw the movie too. And
he's dope. Yes. So I went back and watched Pete's Dragon with my son on Disney, which he did that. And then I watched A Ghost Story on Netflix, which he did, which blew my mind. And then I realized, looking at his IMDb, I saw his first movie ever in theater called Ain't Them Bodies Saints from 2013, which was this beautifully filmed kind of Bonnie and Clyde joint where it was visually stunning. The music was great. And that was also Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara, who he then used again in Ghost Story. So I kind of went down the rabbit hole with this guy. The only movie I haven't seen yet that he did is The Old Man with a Gun with Robert Redford. That came out maybe 3 years ago.
Oh, so I remember that. I never got to see it.
I just remember always seeing the picture thinking oh, that looks kind of ill the way Robert Redford looks. It looked like something I would use for my album art. And so I was like, oh, once I realized this guy did all these things, I was like, ooh, he's a younger dude. So I was like, this dude's great. So it pulled me back into fantasy Knights and King Arthur stuff, and then his own not discography, filmography, where I watched two of his movies afterwards. So it was cool, man. I really love that movie a lot.
See, there's a see. I won't see. I think the Green Knight is the only one of his movies I've seen so far, and I saw it in the theater because I'm a mark for $6 Tuesday. I feel like people who listen to the show regularly know that I'm big on $6 Tuesdays. So I pulled up and I it's so funny because at the beginning of the movie, you remember at the beginning when the Green Knight first shows up, and then Dev Patel cuts his head off, and then like explains like what happens. I slept through that whole part.
Ooh, whoops!
Like I woke up, I fell asleep for 10 minutes, and I woke up as he was leaving the castle to go find the Green Knight, and then like he shows up, and I'm like, so what's this Green Knight? Like, what did I miss? And then I saw the trailer when I went home, and I was like, oh, I just missed like the most important part of the plot of the movie. Like I missed the whole setup because I'm a dumbass.
Dude.
But
that's the part of the trailer I saw on iTunes where I saw that part, and I was like, here's my $20. Take it. Just that. So I was in. See? And then you missed it. But you got it for $6, so whatever.
Right. I also didn't watch the trailer because I wanted to be surprised by this one. Like I saw what it was about. I didn't realize that it was based on the short story. Or no, it's not a short story, but you know, I watched it and right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I've been sitting with it for like a month and a half. I wasn't sure if I liked it or not. I think I liked it. It's like
cool.
I'm a big proponent of like that magical realism type of stuff, and I love it. It's like really, really subtle. And like kind of messes with the guy's perception of reality, and I love stuff like that. Like he's clearly going, well, I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis because he doesn't look like he's like that old, but like he's kind of going through this moment where he's trying to prove something to himself more than anybody else. And it's just like, you know, like the whole movie really could have just been called I'm Pussy. Like honestly, like he was just kind of proving that to
with himself. That, right? Like the whole thing is like about masculinity. Like what lengths a man will go to prove that I'm a man as defined by the culture around him, his family, the field he's in, where he lives. Like in modern times, it might be, you know, I don't know, picking a fight with someone, or it might be like going to jail, or it might be like working in a hard labor job. You know what I mean? Like depending on, again, all those things of where you grew up, like what your zip code is, what family you were born into, what part of the world, you know, it might be going off to war or join the military. So for him, it's like unnecessarily show it out to live up to, I don't want to ruin it for people that haven't seen it, but yeah, it's a really fascinating take on what it takes to be a man in history. A man's man,
right? And I love I'm a big fan of Dev Patel. I think he's been doing really wonderful stuff over the course of the last decade, and I was afraid he was going to get typecast after Slumdog Millionaire, but he's really taken on some like really interesting roles, and like seeing him pop up in like medieval times and like having like a brown person and like brown people just being there, like that was dope to me. Like just like a nice the best kind of historical revisionism. I'm fucking with all of that shit.
Yeah, and even like his mother, you know what I mean? Like how they casted her. And I remember I seen when he was on Newsroom on HBO. I really liked him a lot on that show. And I don't even remember. I saw Slumdog, but I just saw it because it was a big movie at the time. But I don't remember much about it beyond like it terrified me to ever visit India. I'm like, yo, it is grimy out in India, bro.
See,
I'm good.
I don't remember anything about it either. Like it really was just one of those like event movies back when like monoculture was a thing and like everyone needed to go see it. Like that was back when whatever movie won Best Picture, that was the movie everybody went to see. Like even if you weren't fucking with that kind of movie, you saw it because it won the Oscar. And like it's not really like that anymore. At least not at the on the scale that it was before. Like nobody gives a shit about the Oscars no more. Nobody cares.
No, it's
because they don't care.
Like, you know? No, it's the same way because back then you're right. Like that would determine like, oh, should I see this? You know what I mean? Versus like if you have Netflix and a movie's nominated for Best Picture, you can just watch it right now. You don't have to do anything special. You can just check it out. You know what I mean? Versus like back then, like only in the theater for 6 months and then wait 3-4 months and then red box it or DVD or whatever the hell it was. Yeah, it was very different. It's like 10 years ago. Wow.
Yeah, like it's so crazy how fast things are evolving and things are moving. And one more thing before we move on,
Sure.
I've been doing some research into like what the movie theater to home video pipeline was like right when VHS tapes popped off.
I remember this.
Because like right before, from what I understand, right before it was just like the movie would be in theaters for a couple months and then just like go back into the studio vault until they decided to bring it out for a 5-year
Mm,
anniversary. And
mm,
like I can't imagine not having at least like a VHS tape or like a
right,
DVD or something to like be
right.
able to own the movie on home media. It's so crazy to think that
Yeah.
like Disney really like popped that off. They kind of started the home video or they didn't start it, but like they were the first big company to embrace it. And then everybody
Mm,
else was like, "Oh, we see we're making $1 billion off Little Mermaid DVDs.
yes.
Let me get in on this." Like or tapes, not DVDs. But
Yeah,
anyway, yeah.
they made a ton of money off of it. And I remember just like how long movies would stay in theaters and how people would just go see it again. Just because, like, oh, you liked it?
Right.
Well, you don't want to wait 7 months for it to come out on VHS. I can go catch it again because it's dope. Like, imagine now, like, what the only people I think now see movies in theaters more than once is like super Comic Con types. They'll be like,
Like
yo,
us.
yeah, like, yo, I saw, fucking, I saw Shang-Chi 4 times in the theater. You know what I mean? Like, it was crazy.
Right.
I just love it so much. But that's like a very specific kind of person versus like when Titanic was out, people saw it in the theater like 3 times. Or like Mission Impossible 1, people just kept seeing it because nothing was like that. And you're like, this movie's
Right.
crazy. Saw it 3 times in the last 5 months, but it was out for 5 months. Yeah, it was crazy.
That's
That's
hilarious.
25 years ago.
And like you remember hearing about the guy who went to go see Captain Marvel like 27 times in the theater, and then he like met
Yeah.
Brie Larson, and
Oh
like
my
people
God.
like that's some other shit, you know,
He's got like a
like
personality to like something's going on there. That movie's
oh
first of all, that
man.
movie's mid as hell. Like even seeing
Oh
it more than once is
man.
a waste of time. But like
I liked
when
Captain
people do
Marvel.
that, it's all right. But I'm just like,
That's fair. That's
I can
fair.
go on. I can give you a good Captain Marvel rant where she's always been a boring character in comics for 40, 50 years. There's nothing interesting about her. So like making the movie where it's like it's the 90s. That's what's cool about her. She's wearing a Nirvana shirt. I'm like, all right, bro. I mean, sure. It was just she just existed to punch Thanos in the face. Like, who can we summon that could hurt him if they punched him in the face? Captain Marvel, boom, push her to the front. She's right in the front of all the characters. We're gonna give her a movie. But yeah, maybe the second one's gonna be fun because there's fun parts. I'm not dunking on the whole movie, but
Right.
I'm a
Yeah.
comic book maniac, so I'm a
Oh yeah, I
purist.
know you are. And
I'm deep.
like it's interesting that you bring up that you think Captain Marvel is kind of boring because I think there's so much going on with her character. Like there was
Mhm.
like the one story I always think of is that one Avengers story where the time traveling dude basically like real quick content warning, like trigger warning for anybody listening, like he basically like time rapes her,
Mm.
and like he like hijacks her uterus to like rebirth himself in the present day or some crazy shit.
It's
Like
too much. It's too
it
much.
was really awful. And then what's up, my man Chris Claremont was like, nah. Like he like
Yeah.
5 years later he was like, nah, I gotta
Nah.
like the Avengers did nothing for her, and then she was like, hey, like y'all let me get assaulted by this maniac. Like I'm
Yep.
leaving you and I'm joining the X-Men. Like
Yeah,
and then
dude.
like and then from there like there was the whole like binary thing. I don't know. Like Carol Danvers has some pretty like outside of all of that. Obviously,
Yes.
she has some pretty interesting stuff going on, especially during that run when she like kind of was like struggling with alcoholism. And Carol
Yes.
Danvers has been through a lot, bro. Like
She's been
I've
through a lot. I just think like the way they've tried to make her a thing, it reminds me of like in DC back in the day when they were trying to make Steel a thing. Like
stop.
make this person like leapfrog, where you're like, yeah, they're cool, like they're pretty cool, but you trying to put them in the front of every event and like this central. I'm like, that's got to happen on its own. You know what I mean? That would be like Wolverine became Wolverine not because they were like, check it out, he's got claws, kids love claws, he's everywhere. They were like, well, he kind of fights the Hawk, his mask is kind of wild buns. Then well, he's not a main X-Men, he's like a rescue team. Like that organically happened where Wolverine was like the main thing versus like with Captain Marvel the last 10, 15 years in the books and then the shows and movie, they're like, oh no, she's like all the way in the front. I'm like, well, you had Black Widow, like you have all these other people that you just kind of like dumped on to push her, like Scarlet Witch, like, oh, we're getting to someone crazy. After 15 movies, she gets a show. You know, it's just funny to me where I'm just like the thought process behind this. I'm like, what? Huh? Like Civil War 2, Captain Marvel. I'm like, really? She's the one in Civil War 2? Captain Marvel. Okay. You guys want to do that? Put her on the cover. I'm like, all right. So that's what
I will say. I'm a big fan of Kamala Khan. I think she's an amazing character.
She's awesome.
I'm great. So like, I can't wait for her to get in. I can't wait for her. I think she's getting her own show. I think she's gonna be in the Marvels, the big sequel movie. I'm so hyped. I love she's from Jersey City. So like that's right near me. Like, you know, Jersey's finest, Jersey like always. So like I'm yeah, man. But like I think she's like Carol Danvers has a lot of really great moments to me, but I think Kamala Khan is like, she's the one, man. Like I can't wait for more people to know who she is. Like,
dude, she's just funny, you know what I mean? Like dealing with high school shit. She's fire. Like to me, she's more interesting too. Like I'm more interested in what she's got going on than like the Brie Larson version. That's all. I just think the Brie Larson version is just kind of bland. And for the movie, like it was just a weird thing to watch versus like all the weird, bizarro ways you could play with Carol Danvers, like this intergalactic person who was always being yanked around. And then there's Marvel, and then there was the Black Captain Marvel. Like there's just so many things. And they were like, nope, she's in the 90s, young Nick Fury, go. I'm like, okay, sure. Okay, fine. You know,
right.
Punch Thanos 2 movies later. Okay, here she is.
Right. I do appreciate that we know how and why Nick Fury's eye got fucked up because of the cat.
Yeah, that's cool.
I like that. Yeah. That was cute.
That's fun. That's what I'm saying. Like to me, he was the best part. Like I love watching him, and then the Skrulls and the Kree. And okay.
Oh yeah, right. I was about to say,
you're like, it's a breeding ground for all that stuff. I just thought like what did he do with her was more just like to service these other things to even get to like Monica Rambeau and the what's the name show on WandaVision and Sword. Like it was great. I just felt like everything about her stuff, I was like, okay, it could have been like the Green Lantern movie or something. Like it just didn't.
Right.
She just gets a rock, hits her with power. And I'm like, okay, what else? And she whooped people's ass. And it was pretty ill when she cut the spaceship in half, but
that shit was fire. Yeah.
That was crazy. But I was like, beyond that, I'm like, maybe the next one they beef up. That's all. I'm just hating. No. Made $1 billion. What do I know?
I respect it. Before we move on, like for real this time, sure. I'm trying to remember. Monica Rambeau, she becomes Photon, right?
I think so.
Is that who she becomes? It's either that or because it's not binary, right?
Oh God, you're pulling me because that's the era I started dipping out on anything beside X-Men.
Shit, I can't remember, but either way, like I'm happy Monica Rambeau's around. I think Tiana Parrish is a great actress, and I think she's gonna do wonders with that character.
She's phenomenal. She was great on Mad Men. Yeah,
she was, and on you ever watch Survivor's Remorse? It ran for like a really short time, but it was this cool Showtime show about basketball and fun shit.
Wait, someone was telling me about that show. I can't remember who it was. I heard it was really good. But she's a phenomenal actress.
Yeah, she's fantastic. So obviously you have a pretty solid base when it comes to both movies and comics. And now like, yeah, I'm gonna make this a little different because I want to talk to you about both. So let's start off with like, what's the first movie experience you can remember having? Like it could be at your cousin's house, at the theater, it could be like at Blockbuster or whatever the fuck. Like, what's the first time you remember watching a movie?
That's a great question. And real quick, I'm in my basement doing the show, so we have my wife's washing clothes. So if you hear water in the background, I'm not peeing off camera. It's just the washer loading up.
He promises.
I think the first movie experience I remember having was my father taking me to theater to see Pinocchio. So I remember like Pinocchio was like a big deal in my life because then, like you said before about Disney stuff, like that was like when they brought it back in the theaters, like it probably in the 40th or whatever it was, because it was the 80s when I went. But I remember seeing that in the theater and just like being blown away, like the colors and the imagery and then the story of Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket. And then later on we had like a big Pinocchio poster in my room from seeing it. And again, back then it was like you weren't just getting hit with kids movies every 3 weeks. There wasn't like a new kid thing coming out. So it was like you were watching old stuff. You know what I mean? So like, and then after that movie, I became obsessed with like Mary Poppins on VHS. Like I used to watch that all the time. So again, even like the original like Peach Dragon or The Sword and the Stone, like these movies by this point were anywhere from like 20 to 40 years old when I was watching them back then. But I remember like getting sucked into that Disney wave, and you weren't getting, you know, like the buy-ins, like the Happy Meal items of the newest stuff. Like you just had that. There was nothing else. You just had it. There wasn't, you know, like a hoodie, like a sleeping bag, Pinocchio sleeping bags. So it was like you were just stuck in that world of watching it and like looking at it, and like it meant a lot because it was, you couldn't really get it anywhere else. So that was the one I remember the most.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like imagine having a Pinocchio body pillow like right after you watch the movie the first time, just like the big ass like
yeah, or like a Jiminy Cricket like Funko Pop, whatever, you know, Funko
right?
things, whatever they are. Like that just wasn't there. It was just, that's all you had was watching it.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy because my father, before I was born, or actually no. I'm trying to remember when Laserdisc stopped, but he has a huge Laserdisc collection. He's like my dad. My dad was all like, he's always like, whenever the new technology thing pops off, he needs to have it. It doesn't matter what it is. So like he got so like he has so like he had there were like a handful of Pinocchio wasn't one of them, but there were like a bunch of movies that he just got on Laserdisc. And that's like fire. That was like just a weird, just like just home media back in the day was just really fucking strange. And like people's relationship to movies then is so different than it is now in a lot of weird ways that I'm just like really unpacking as we're talking about this right now.
It was awesome because it's like you just, everything was more inconvenient and it cost money. So like you were invested. Like you didn't buy Terminator on Laserdisc for whatever it was, $40, $50 to watch it once. Right. You know,
you were committed, just check
bro. It out. You're in. You know what I mean? Like you're buying the Laserdisc. It takes up a lot of space. It's huge. It's brittle. Yeah, it's not a one and done type of situation.
Yeah, the shits are bigger than vinyl. Like yes, vinyl's already big. Like
yeah, they were big, man. Blocked a lot of dust.
Honestly. So same question, but for comics. Like when did you first start reading comics, and when did they become like really important to you in that way?
That's a great question too. I think when I was real young, I found like my dad's old like Justice League, like giant size Justice League, like DC comics in my grandmother's house. And so I was reading like the 60s Flash and 60s Superman books, and you know, like with Crypto the dog, and like everyone's like real happy. You know what I mean? Like those books are just like Boy Scout books. Everyone's like smiling all the time.
Especially
and so I just
Superman
like love
stuff. Yeah.
Very much so, right? You know what I mean? And like Mixoplix and Bizarro. And so I remember those. And then once there started being comic book stores near me, my dad would take me, and then, you know, you can get, basketball. I was like collecting cards first, like baseball cards. And then I would go to comic book store because they would have the baseball cards. Then like in the basement, you'd walk down, they would have all the comics. So then that's when I just started like being blown away at like all the colors and imagery and like, you know, Spider-Man and like the ones kids kind of gravitate towards first that are just like more kid friendly. And then once the late 80s, early 90s hit, and then X-Men hit, like that was what really yanked me in. So it wasn't just like drawing Batman. It was like, okay, Wolverine, and then Cyclops and Gambit and Beast, you know, and then like the Jim Lee stuff happened, and it became, then there's comic book stores everywhere. So now there's just like, you're in the mall and there's a comic book store, and then on the way home there's a comic book store, and then right down your block there's a comic book store. So then it's like the wave is hitting, and you could get an Image, you know, and all that stuff. So I remember like catching it as it building up with everyone everywhere else. And then also just kind of getting like cheap books too. You can go to the back and get like, oh, this bin's a quarter. So you would just have like $3 and just get a bunch of old random books, you know, like vampire books from the 70s, or like small characters like Animal Man back then, or like Sleepwalker or something.
That's so
and
hard.
Like check
I love Animal Man.
Yeah, like grabbing the 80s books, you know, the Guy Gardner Green Lantern joints, like the off the beaten path characters that were cheap. So if you only had like $10, you can get like 1 or 2 X-Men. And then your change, you would get like the woebegone forgotten joints. You know what I mean? Like, so finding all them too, you're like, oh, like the way they looked, the way they were drawn was different, and like the condition of the books, more kind of raggedy, and like the yellowed pages. So it kind of gave you appreciation for like where things were in the moment with Jim Lee, and then a beat up like Adam Strange book or something that you got for a quarter. You kind of start as a kid, you're like noticing what's different about them, and then kind of pulling all in. So, and again, like kind of the industry was crescendo, like Death of Superman was big at the time, and like Batman Nightfall. So that
Right.
was kind of hitting at the same time as I was getting more and more into it and getting money on my own and buying stuff. It was fun, man. It was a it was a blast.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Thanks,
Um,
dude.
I'm trying to remember what I was gonna say. Oh yeah, so like X-Men. You mentioned X-Men specifically a few times. Like, what is it like?
Definitely.
What was it about X-Men that really caught you? And like, because it seems like that's kind of the thing that's became like your focal point after a while.
You know what? That's a great question, dude. I feel like X-Men was like people in my generation a little bit older. It was like our thing. It was like Justice League and Avengers, that's the 60s. That's like the baby boomer run. That's their group. And they're great. Like I love those books. But X-Men was kind of like hip hop. It was like new, like I mean, like that era of X-Men, and we're older, but I mean like Gambit, X-Men, Psylocke, that
Right.
grouping, like that was like our team. And we claimed it being younger and that being the hottest book ever with the hottest artist, and even like Rob, I never always say his name wrong, like Liefeld, like his run with Cable and all that, and Deadpool. It felt like that was our thing, Tom McFarlane, the same way like rap was like ours. So you can have, okay, you can read Justice League and all of that, but like we're rocking with X-Men, we're rocking with X-Force, Cable, like that's who we are going to choose. And the books are about being outcasts. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so back then, if you like rap, especially, looking like me and where I live, like that was not cool. It wasn't cool to be a white dude listening to rap music. It's
Right.
just, it was not
I
the
can
look.
imagine. I can
Yeah. Like
imagine.
in 92, like walking around knowing Tribe and House of Pain, like no one that it was cool to like it as like a song. You could like a rap song, like It Takes Two to Make a Thing Go Right. Okay, you can like that,
Yeah.
but you can't like,
Right.
you can't like own Day Lock cassettes. Like, why are you doing that? So it was kind of like a rebellious thing, and the X-Men were rebellious, and like the art and the muscles and all the pouches, like it was a new thing, and I think that's what like grabbed us because I just know like a lot of hip hop people love X-Men.
Oh
You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like Mike
definitely.
Eagle, me, Curly Castro, Sketch 185, shouts to Sketch. It's like that's our common language of books. Like we're not being like, yo, like there's
Right.
people I love, but they don't love no Plastic Man. I like Plastic Man. They're not rocking with
Right.
Plastic Man. You know, it's like my weirdo dude.
Right. And like and now that I never thought about that before you mentioned it just now. Like a lot of rappers love X-Men. And it's not even just of your era, like my era. Like we like a lot of people that like I grew up listening to and a lot of people that I run with right now love X-Men. And like you look at the run of the covers that Marvel did, a lot of those hip hop covers were X-Men based. A lot of them. One of my favorites was done by Kieran Grant. He did the X-23 cover that was DMX's Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood. I met him at Comic-Con one year and I had him sign my cover and I was like, bro, like this is amazing. Like one of my favorite albums. Like just it's so like I never really thought about it before, but like hip hop's relationship with X-Men is like super duper dope. Like I really love that. So yeah, I
It's great.
appreciate you bringing that up because it's
Oh,
just
that's a great question. Thank you. And it's like if you listen to like indie rappers specifically, like we're rebellious and contrarian by nature. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Because we're not mainstream. We're not making the songs. Like we know what could hit and we know what works and what the formulas, and we always kind of go against that grain. And so even X-Men 1 is like the biggest book ever. It's like the last it's funny, like watching the world through my son who's 5, about to be 6. Like
Oh,
these kids don't know they don't know what that is.
that's
Think about
crazy.
that, because it's
Yo.
not in the MCU yet. Like
Right.
he knows of them because I gave him my old X-Men toys that I kept and still have. So he
Right.
knows who like Wolverine and Apocalypse is and Juggernaut and Nightcrawler. Like he knows what they are. He knows their name and what they, but he doesn't know like the story yet because they're
Right.
not out. Like if you see a kid with like, you see kids with Deadpool on and Venom. You don't see kids with like Colossus or Cyclops yet. Maybe 3 years from now they will. So it's like, even with us, it's still kind of like a secret, because with Fox and all that, the movies, like when the first movies came out, I was blown away when they made the first one with Hugh Jackman and Storm. I was like, I can't believe I'm watching this. Right. So they had that run early on, and then they got wiped out as soon as the MCU came along. It was like, I see what you're doing, but we're going to do this 50 times better. And they got smashed. You know what I mean? So where like when you watch the Dark Phoenix movie now, you're like, this is, except for the train scene, like this is pretty embarrassing. Like, what are you doing?
Oh my God. Like
they had a head start, but the cool thing was, in the books at least, they were like, okay, we're going to scale it back down and do something crazy with the House of X stuff and the Dawn of X. Like I put rappers onto it, like Def C. I put back onto that book, and Blood Money.
Shout out to Def C, bro.
Yeah, like I got him hooked on that book, and I got Castro. Castro was the biggest X-Men dude I ever knew, and he hadn't read an X-Men book in minimum 25 years.
Wow.
To where now he's got books on call at the comic book store again, like collecting. Or they got the bin, you know what I mean? And spending all his money on comic. I got him back into it off that Hickman run. So it's wild, bro. It's just something that resonates, man. It's just like, it's timeless. Like being the outcast, that never gets old. You know what I mean? Like, and then how do you navigate being an outcast? Do you run from it? Do you buck back? Do you link up with other outcasts? Like, do you gain leverage and strength and power? Do you go in hiding? Like, how do you make that move? So I think it's like, it's so cool. Like they'll never go away. You know what I mean? It's just, whether the movies are popping or not, it's going to mean a lot to people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And like for context, like those first X-Men movies, like we had the cartoon too. So I was already like kind of familiar, but like, the cartoon was gigantic. And like, and but then like the movies were like the first two specifically, like those like X1 and X2 were like really foundational movies for me growing up. Just to like understanding, not even just understanding the characters, but understanding those general concepts of like, I mean, like I already had a fair amount of experience of like being an outcast, because like I'm Black, bro. But like, it was like that just kind of put it into a really interesting context, especially considering a lot of the queer readings on X2 in particular now. Like it's kind of been building over the course of the last decade, but it's like really like the explicit focal point now. And I really appreciate that about it. And like, and like, I'm really excited to see the X-Men like show up in the MCU, because when they do, like we're all in, like it's gonna be this cross-generational, it's gonna be this big event, because like the X-Men are just like, they're the X-Men. Like everybody knows the X. Even if you don't read comics or watch the movies, the X-Men and Spider-Man. Like everybody knows the X-Men and Spider-Man.
Everybody knows
Wolverine. Like exactly. And Wolverine and Storm. Like Wolverine and Storm are to me the two X-Men. Like
right.
So. And Magneto, Magneto, everybody loves Magneto too.
Everybody,
But like, I'm yelling right now. I'm trying to calm down. But but yeah, I'm all about that. I can't wait for kids to know who the X-Men are.
It's gonna be dope, dude. It's gonna be dope. Like, what world did you imagine kids were more excited about Deadpool than X-Men?
That's pretty wild, right? Yeah.
Venom. Kids love Venom. They love Venom. Same way I did. I just didn't have the movies. You know what I mean? Like I love Venom because the teeth and the tongue. He's gross. He's scary. They love Venom, dude. Yeah,
they love Venom for the same reason they love Hulk. Like Hulk is like, big and powerful and can do cool, crazy stuff, and is sometimes pretty funny. I wasn't a big fan of the new Venom movie, but like I'm kind of interested in the new one. I hope it's good.
Why not? Carnage.
I love Carnage. I don't know. Like I had
that Super Nintendo game. I had the Carnage game.
Wow. I've only ever seen clips. I never owned this. I always wanted to own a Super Nintendo, but I never got one.
It was like the first time you could play as Venom. You got to pick being Spidey or Venom. And then move to the city. Okay. It was crazy. Right. You were like, what? I can be Venom in this game? We have a common enemy in Carnage?
Like,
I'm in.
Damn. That beat 'em up era was something else, man. We could really talk about this shit all day, man. I'm like,
greatest, dude. It's the most fun.
For real. Like I really want to go buy it. Like I have like an antique game store near me. I might actually go cop a
Ooh,
Super Nintendo at some point.
get
Just for
that
shits.
piece.
For real. So so for you, like when did you first fall in love with music? Like you kind of already hinted at it, but like when did rap first formally become a thing that you were like, yeah, I'm fucking with this forever?
Hmm, that's a great question, bro. I was a big, I mean, I'm an only child, and I was growing up like when MTV was like popping, and I got to spend a lot of time watching TV, which was fun too. So I can never find like the first time I was like, this is the dopest thing I've ever seen. But I remember like seeing the videos for like Run DMC, and then later, and like the Fat Boys, and then later it was like Young MC, you know, Bust a Move, and like Tone Loc, Wild Thing, and then like Bell Biv DeVoe with Poison, where it was like rap and R&B at the same time. And then I remember like very specifically when like Dre and Snoop hit, that was the first time where I was like, okay, nothing else matters anymore. Like this is it. It's this stuff. You know what I mean? It's not Michael Jackson. It's not Madonna. It's not anything else. Not Tone Loc or any of these other cats. Again, shouts to them. I love them. But like when I saw
Right.
that video for Nothing But a G thing, and the Chronic hit to where it was such a, it was like seeing like another planet. You're just like, I missed I missed NWA because they didn't play that a lot when I was a kid around here because I'm in Philly. But I remember like being at a popular intersection where they would have like t-shirt stands, and they had like the Chronic hat with like the blunt leaf. Like
Mm.
that's how hard that hit. Like on the East Coast in the 90s, like you would get West Coast gear. So I would leave, I would go to McDonald's and walk out, and there was a t-shirt stand with everything like Dre and Snoop wearing. You could just buy it for $10. And so
It's
I remember seeing
ridiculous.
that, like, this is it. And that, so like basically the beginning of like the West Coast run for me when I was like 9 or 10 years old, being like, this is everything. Because before that, it was like, again, like Bobby Brown and Belle Biv DeVoe were like cool and fresh and being like hip hop adjacent, like House Party and all that stuff. But this was like dangerous to me. This was like very accessible, dangerous music that my parents definitely. Once my parents were like, "You can't wear that or buy that,"
It was like,
that's
all
when I got
right,
hooked. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
no one had a problem with Tone Loc and Naughty by Nature or like Crisscross. I had the Crisscross tape. That was great. Thumbs up. We could play that in the car together. Wonderful. When they
Right.
heard like bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks, lick on these nuts and suck the dick, like that's a bridge
Yeah.
too far. We can't go there. Which so I had to like then that even like X-Men, it became like my thing. Like I hide my copy of Doggy Style under my carpet in my room. Like they can't know I have this. They can't know I have the Chronic. And so it became like my little thing to have. And those were massive records. So you would, hear the radio edit, you'd see the video should be blurred out. And you're like, what is going on? Like, what are these guys doing? This is crazy. So that pulled me in from like the visual and the music side. And then once I got into it, that was like the gateway drug. Then it's like, okay, oh, who's Warren G? I got to get the Warren G album. Who's Dog Pound?
Right.
I got to get that album.
Man.
Lady of Rage. I remember her from that album. Let me get the
Lady of
Lady of Rage
Rage,
joint.
bro.
And then the East Coast response became even bigger. So it's like, oh, Onyx, whoa, Wu-Tang, damn, Biggie,
Yeah.
not this is amazing. Like it just everything started just leveling everything up. And I don't want to like just dwell on the 90s. It's like, oh, the 90s was the greatest. But it
No, of
really
course.
there was like there was more demand, and then there was better stuff being made in response to everything else. So
Right.
that time, like if I was born, late 90s, I don't know if I feel the same way, or like early 70s or something, but that all was just peaking at the same time like comics are peaking. You know what I mean? It was just a really interesting moment. You don't know as it's happening, but I feel like and then once you start buying those tapes and getting hooked on it, and then all your friends are into it, and it is the hottest thing in the world, like hearing the song Method Man, like METHOD, like that.
METHOD,
Like when
man.
I
Son.
heard, I mean, I will go to school and everyone was saying, I got 5 bags of skunk, I got what say
Blunts,
this shit
yeah.
to each other. Like everyone was just saying it on the street. and cars playing it. So you're just like, this is like electricity, like this is, and it's our thing. Our parents don't want us to know this. Like they hate it. You know what I mean? And like all those committee meetings, like rap is destroying the youth, fucking gangster rap is the end.
Yeah,
and we were like, no,
people
it's
running
not.
over the albums and shit, like with
Like,
the
Senate
steamrollers, like
hearings, about like, and Snoop murder was a case. He's on trial for murder.
oh
Then he
yeah,
puts out an album called Murder Was the Case.
the
Like,
case,
well,
yeah, bro.
it was, everything was like being blurred in, and it was like, it was fantastical. So then when I decided to rap, it was at the height of like Wu-Tang Forever and Cannabis and DMX and Nori and Pun, like that wave of guys come in, like a newer, younger wave that were all different and weird and cool. And like they even have the song on the DJ Clue album called Fantastic Four, where it's Cannabis, Nori, you know what I mean? Pun, like that's kind of, I saw a song called Fantastic Four. I don't even like Fantastic Four, but I was like, of course I gotta buy that. Like naturally,
Right,
it's all my new favorite dudes. It's called Fantastic Four. I gotta get it. You know what I mean? So it was like everything was just really fresh and thrilling and interesting. And I just, even when times weren't good in music, I still could find things all over the place that made me want to keep doing it as an artist and also as a fan. Like you can't see my camera, but there's just so much money spent near me on CDs and vinyl and tapes. It drives my wife insane. I get it, but it's all like cloistered in one specific spot of my house.
Right.
But I look at this, I'm like, bro, that could have been like my retirement money right there. That's like an extra 20 grand just sitting there in a cabinet. But it was like going to the record store every week.
So I have four things I want to say about everything you just that was a crazy bit you just gave. But like I got my record crate right next to me. I've got like hundreds of dollars worth of records in my shit right now. Like I just got a couple recently because I just wow, I'm really about to plug something on my own podcast. I just wrote the fucking listening notes for the Public Enemy for the reissue of Public Enemy's Fear of a Black Planet for Vinyl Me Please. I just got my copy, and they sent me like 5 other records too. They sent me 36 Chambers. They sent me Thug So Much Fun. They sent me Ludacris's Word of Mouth, and they sent me what's the last one? Freddie Gibbs' Straight Killer. Yeah.
Ooh,
so like
no filler, straight killer, no filler.
Honestly, like so is
that the one that has the Janet Jackson flip?
I think so.
He does Got Till It's Gone. I love that shit. He just like slowed it down.
Man.
No, wait. No, he flips That's the Way Love Goes. Not Got Till.
Right. Yeah. Which is one of my favorite Janet Jackson songs. I love that. I love that shit.
That's probably my number one. That's my number one Janet joint.
It's maybe like top 5 or top 3 for me. There's too many to choose.
Seriously.
But so like younger listeners who are slightly younger than me, like I was born in 92. Okay. So I was an infant when The Chronic came out. Mm-hmm. But like I don't think people who weren't there understand just how much of a tectonic shift that album represented in the consciousness. Like and same with because like I've been going back and listening to The Chronic like a lot lately. It's like Swing Down Sweet Chariot is one of my favorites. Like that and Nothing But a G Thing are just like those are like perfect songs to me. Like
it's R&B. The album's R&B. It's an R&B album, bro. Straight up. It's like R&B and funk. It's like the perfect distillation of Black music, like the best parts of Black music from the 70s, right? Meets like Black West Coast culture of the 90s, meets taking over the radio and it's because you're seeing it. It's like when kids saw Black Panther, right?
Right.
You're like, number one, I didn't know there was Black superheroes that were this ill, because a kid seeing Black Panther never saw Blade. They don't know what Blade is. Like I saw Blade in the theater. That blew my mind. The first one, I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
And that was foundational for all superhero movies too. Like Blade never gets his flowers for that.
No. So they'll bring him back out. But it's like, so if you weren't there for P-Funk, you weren't, you know what I mean? Like Dre gives you that 20 years later, you know what I mean? Right. And P-Funk changes everything from all over the South, Virginia, DC, like everyone had like P-Funk pockets. Everyone's grandmom and their aunt and uncle had it in the crate. All right, but skip forward 20 years. A kid, me, I don't know what the hell P-Funk is, but I know what Dre is, and I know he's wearing a video in the shirt. He's wearing a shirt in a video pointing to a shirt that says Funkadelic. I'm like, what's that? What is Funkadelic? And people are like, Funkadelic is? Let me play you that song. You know what I mean? So like it like reintroduces that the same way like Black Panther is like, yo, here's a world where the dopest superhero is a black dude, and here's his whole culture.
And that was like a whole, like, I feel like most people listening probably remember what the craze around Black Panther was like. Like that was a movie you went to go see in the like I saw that multiple times in the theater. Like that was a moment.
Right.
Like that was a moment. And like, and you mentioned and you mentioned 36 Chambers too, because like I can say about 36 Chambers, I remember when I first heard the Method Man song. And like when people my age had first heard the Method Man, and like we heard that shit and ran it like it was new. Like everyone discovered 36 Chambers around the same time.
That's cool.
And we were running that shit like it was new, bro. Like I was like, so I just can't even put into words how I felt when I first heard that song. Like with the skit and shit, like just like, oh God, like it's just such a, like, at that point, the album was already, that came out in 93. So yes. I probably heard it for the first time when I was in like maybe late middle school or early high school. So the album was already like almost 20 years old at that point.
Okay.
No, closer to like 15 years old.
Okay.
So like that was new to so many people, and it just like instantly connected. And like, so, I forget who mentioned it. It was it was Earl Sweatshirt. He did an interview where he said that Madvillainy was our 36 Chambers. And okay. I would agree with that, because like I also found that album around the same time, and that's when my like that and Mouse and the Mask were my two introductions to Doom. Those are my two introductions to Doom.
You know what's ill? Like I like how you said that, because I remember. Okay, so when Madvillainy hit 04, I was a senior in college. And that was like my first like iPod album, where someone just loaded on my iPod. It was all out of order. Like the first song was like Rhinestone Cowboy on the version I heard. It was, everything was totally random. Right. I didn't know for years Accordion was the first song. But what's really foundational about both those records is when that hits in 04, that's like the height of like Kanye, College Dropout. Then that's
that'd
also
come out like a year before in 03, right?
I think no, that was like early 04, right? And then that's also like the Little John sound. It's the beginning of the South sound, which is sample-less music, but it's really big and ornate and wonderful. And it's like the gangster rap era, like it's the G Unit era. So what Madvillainy, here's a loop off of a cassette, and here's a dude rhyming with no hook. The same way like 36 Chambers is, it's 93, and rap, house music, R&B, this is the beginning of the industry, like really clicking off and booming. Dre and Snoop, like big albums with big hooks and all this. And here's 9 dudes with masks on.
Right.
Like the
and
raw,
superhero names.
The rawness, right? With superhero names and the rawness of it. Like when Method Man is this, Method Man's a single, it's a smash, it's catchy. But the first single is Protect Your Neck, where it's just 9 dudes rapping. You know what I mean? And it's like, you don't know who's who, what their names are. It's completely counter to everything happening in culture. And they also like Doom is one of the greatest writers ever, and Madlib's one of the greatest producers ever. Wu-Tang is RZA, arguably the greatest producer ever. And then you have Method Man, most charismatic dude ever. Ghostface, arguably the best rapper ever. Raekwon, arguably one of the best rappers ever. And Old Dirty, one of the most charismatic people. So just even half of the group is 4 incredible artists on top of arguably the greatest producers' beats going left of center. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is what Madvillainy was. It was like, I remember hearing it being like, there's no choruses. You know what I mean? I'm like, damn, it was 1 minute and 40 seconds. The song is over. Oh, Jesus. Okay, the Kanye songs are 4.5 minutes, and I love the Kanye songs, but it's just like, like flip it like an old jazz standard, and like a jazz song's in the middle. You're like, what the fuck? It's just that rawness means something to people. You know what I mean? Where it's so unorthodox, but it's being conducted by like the greatest people ever.
Right. And
like
the shit was just so weird. Yeah, definitely. Right. And like I was really big on like Lil Jon and like crunk and snap music at the time too. But like that was kind of like my introduction. Like the Doom stuff really led me to everything else. And then I started to like really dig into my history. Like I had like, cool. Like I was big on like Kanye and Lupe as well. But like I really started to huge. I started to dig into the history, like around that time when I first heard like Madvillainy, and then like, you know, I started getting into Wu-Tang and Gangstar
Mm.
and Black Moon, and like I really like
Ooh,
dug into it, you know, like it
that's
was
great.
really interesting relationship with
That's
music
it's
back
your
then.
gateway drug. That's
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah, like
honestly,
I
like
have a kid who works for me. He's 27 and I'm 39. And so it's interesting, like because he understands Doom and he loves Madlib, I can be like, okay, because you like those two and understand these guys, I want to let you hear the Organized Confusion album, Stress. I think you'll get it.
stress,
He heard it and he was like, yo, I went on eBay last night and just bought the CD for $30. Like, I got to own
son.
that. I got to
You
put it in my
gotta,
car. Like, this shit is crazy to me. So it's cool to me to like, Doom lets you, like, if you want to like Doom, it's like what my man Barry, Disco Vietnam, says about Billy Woods. Barry's like, you have to make a deliberate choice to like Billy Woods because
yeah,
that is a very left of center guy
that's
from a rap
investment music.
standpoint when you hear it.
That's
Right.
investment
So like
music.
me and Castro will say, like Prem was talking about Woods when History Will Absolve Me hit back in 2012, talking our ear off about it. New York, oh, this is crazy. Me and Castro were like, I don't get this at all. What the fuck is going on? Huh? You like this? I don't even understand it. And now 10 years later, he's our homie. Woods and Elucid and all them taking over the world, working with Al and Castro and Prem on his label. But at the time, me and Castro were the most weirdo dudes in Philly. We were like, I don't get this,
Right.
bro. Yours is weird. This is weird for us. You know what I mean? But it's like when you make that investment into Doom, it's going to reward you if you stick with it. You know what I mean? Because now everything else makes more sense to be
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, okay, this isn't the strangest thing to have a song of meat grinder or something. You know what I mean? Like
Right. And you know, like it kind of like I don't want to dwell too much because I know we're on a strict time crunch.
no, we
But
you know what,
like,
my schedule's a little more open actually, so we're good. Don't
all
feel
right, yeah,
stressed.
yeah. Okay, cool.
No.
So you know, like like growing up on Doom and kind of like mainlining all this stuff the way I did and the way I have been since then, really, like
Mhm.
it's kind of like there's just such an incredible youth movement happening in like quote unquote, so like I hate using the term underground, but I can't think of anything else. You know, like there's like this incredible movement happening between artists like Navy Blue and Mike, and you know, and like I was listening to some of the new singles from the Wiki album, and I remember when
Oh, I
Rat
love
King first
Wiki.
popped off.
Oh, I
I remember
love
when Rat
Wiki.
King first popped off. Like that was like college, like late college, like post college for me. Like when So It Goes came out. Like that's like really like seeing him make that stuff back then, and seeing him kind of finding his way into this bustling community that's happening right now, because like that wasn't there 10 years ago, at least not in the way that it is now. You know, like I was there, so like it, like
Facts.
knowing that they were all around, like, and seeing him kind of find his balance and find his footing there, it's just like watching history repeat itself, and just like really reinforce what Tip said about everything moving in cycles, you know, like it's
Facts.
just like, damn, like and it's like I had that frame of reference already. So it made sense. And I was just like, oh, I'm just happy to see more of this. I'm happy
Hell
more
yeah.
people get it, you know, like, so
I remember when
just,
the Rat King record hit, and I remember listening to it. I was really skeptical because I hate all new artists off the rip. I'm just like that. Any new artist, I hate them. I hated Lupe. I hated all these motherfuckers. I just don't like them because everyone's in my face about them. Oh, they're fucking great. I hated Billy Woods at first. Shouts to Woods. I love him. I
shout out
hated
to
all these
Woods.
people, right? I really, truly was like, nah, fuck them. Because again, I'm a contrarian indie asshole. So I'm like, all right, when I finally get around to them, I sit there, I let all the hype die down, and then I'm like, all right, let me just make up my own opinion. So when I played the Rat King record, I was like, holy shit. And then when it was over, I was like, man, if I was like 21 right now and I heard this album, this would have been like My Company Flow or like My Cannibal Ox, where it's like, this is a
Yeah.
version of New York that's brand new, but is a different picture of New York than what everyone else sees or people assume to be the case. And so I remember thinking, like, yo, if I remember saying to people, like, if people in their 20s that catching this album, it's gonna pull them into a lot of other cool weird shit that's happened,
See,
because it's gonna give them the context to understand, like, hey, New York doesn't always need to be what the radio New York wants it to be. It can be this other shit that's kind of dirty and weird and wild and like melodic and sad and like lo-fi and gritty, but also like, you could put 1,000 people in a room at the show and they get it. You know what I mean? It doesn't need to
right.
be like 50 goofballs somewhere.
And I'll tell you right now, I'm living proof of that. Like that's my exact story you're telling right now. So like that
That's
really
awesome.
like it's crazy because like I've been listening to the new Injury Reserve record a lot. Shout out to them. That's those are my people. Um and like hearing the Injury Reserve album and seeing the flex of Rat King in that. Like I hear so much of So It Goes in there. And I hear so much of Slauson Malone and all the really weird and interesting stuff he's doing in there. Like
Right.
seeing that kind of manifest itself a decade later is like,
Mm.
wow, like we really, once again, we're just moving in cycles and we're just here, you know?
I gotta
I don't
check
know.
that album. I
This,
haven't heard it yet. Anything
yeah,
that's
go,
Rat King adjacent, I'm all on board with.
yeah, go listen to By the Time I Get to Phoenix, and anybody list go pick up that By the Time I Get to Phoenix. It's fucking nuts. It's really like nothing I've heard in probably 10 years. Like you like
That's ill. Is
there's
that the name of the album?
it's called By the Time I Get to Phoenix. Yeah.
Because that's the Dorothy Ashby song. I mean, the
Uh-huh.
Public
And
Enemy song. Yeah, I've sampled that joint.
yeah. And they named
Great
it
album.
they named it specifically after the Isaac Hayes cover because
Isaac. There you go.
yeah,
So
no,
much going on with that, man.
for real, shit is
That's
fire.
awesome.
Wow, this has been such a great conversation already. We're about an
Oh,
hour
thanks, man.
in, which is like,
Hell
wow,
yeah.
Jesus,
Zooming through.
already. So, like as you're growing up and you kind of have this basis of, like comics are there, but you got
Right.
film and music kind of like you got these things kind of like, or like all three of them really conversing with each other. But like for you, like we already talked about the time when comics and music kind of came together in your head. Like
Right.
when did you first consciously link or rather was there a moment when you consciously linked film and music together in your head the same way you did
Mm.
with comics? Like did that ever really happen?
Yeah. I think when Juice came out, um,
Mm,
and Juice is, the basis for me and my friends Wrecking Crew. Like everything we do, that's all from the movie Juice. So like our newest compilation, Steel's Kitchen, that's about Juice. The one before
right.
that, Raheem's Lament, that's on that. We did a tour with Prem 7-8 years ago called the Roland Bishop Memorial Tour. That's Tupac's character. So
Yeah.
we've always like tied into that. And there's mad people I know that became DJs because they saw that movie and they saw a DJ ripping it in that movie and at a live show. Like people didn't have access of a certain age, like watching DJs. So Juice, same thing when that came out, it was like really dangerous because people were like getting shot and killed, leaving the theater or renting a movie, and people saying, I got the juice now, like letting off the guns. It was wild. Like they were trying to ban the movie or make it NC-17 or you couldn't rent it. So it was like scary, you know what I mean? It was, but
Right.
it's not like the movie itself is just about like basically like what happens when someone's excessively bullied, like Tupac's a victim in that movie, and he just
Yeah.
gets a gun and becomes basically a school shooter, you know what I mean? But he's just like in his hood. So so the movie
Right.
itself isn't that wild, but it's like when you're watching Juice, the soundtrack was huge, and the DJ aspect, and then Tupac being a rapper and then being in it, and then his profile started getting bigger as an actor and rapper, and like I used to love Tupac. So like all of that with that movie, again, like before that was like House Party and like the Fat Boys movies, but to me they were always kind of like silly, and they were like a fun time. It wasn't really about music, whereas like
Right.
Juice was like every rapper's in the movie. Queen Latifah's in it. What's the name's in it? I think I forget. Is Ice-T in a movie? I can't remember.
No, Ice-T's not in Juice.
EPMD's in it.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, he's
Yep.
not. Samuel L. Jackson pops up early on. So there's again
Yeah.
Tupac, Tretch is in it, but everyone's like taking it seriously. This isn't like some fun shit. This is like dangerous. And so I think that movie was like it was just always come up. Like the music, everything about it was just always around to me for some reason. And again, it was like our thing. Like you weren't allowed to check this movie because it was scary. So if you look up like news clippings from back then about like people getting killed, seeing the
Right.
movie or like pretending to do things from the movie, it was weird. But it was also done by Ernest Dickerson, who was underneath Spike Lee. So it was a
Right.
real film. Like it was a budget. Omar Epps was amazing. The haircuts, the
Mm-hmm.
fashion, like Cypress Hill when they were on fire, hearing them in the movie, it was just like hip hopped out, but it wasn't like breaking where it's like, oh, that's like a gimmick. Oh, kids like the rapping
Right.
and the breaking. We're gonna make a quick movie and make money, or like it wasn't like about some breakdance shit. You know what I mean? So other people like older than me would say like Wild Style or like Style Wars, like from the graffiti side. But
Or even
I
like
think
Crush
Juice,
Groove or something like
Crush
that. Yeah.
Groove, right? Like exactly, like even Crush Groove, which I didn't see till years and years later. Where to me, like Juice was just always a cut above that. It was like it was a dangerous thing, and it's like dude shooting his friends in the alleyway. Like, god damn, like you were just eating eggs with this dude, and you're gonna shoot him? Like, this is fucked up. Versus like,
Yeah.
yo, B boy, yo, hey, let's do it the fresh way. Meet me on the boards, and we start breaking. You know, it
My
wasn't.
name is Charlie, and I'm here to say. Type
Yeah,
shit.
it wasn't like Cold Crush. Like they weren't doing that shit. It was like there's a scarier. And again, I think that fear makes as a kid you want to check out the things people say don't do it. You know what I mean? Like don't do that,
Right.
don't ever do that. It makes kids fucking want to try it out. So I think it was like that specifically. And then over time there became more, like Above the Rim, and more movies had like hip hop elements to it. But like Juice is about a DJ and his friends, and one of his friends is a fucking rapper in real life.
Right.
And it's New York.
And like I act like honestly rewatching Juice recently, to me, a lot of that is a horror movie. Like the second half of Juice, from like
It is.
basically from the time that Bishop kind of loses his mind to the very end, like
Yep.
that's a horror movie. Like the scene
When he pops
like,
up at that locker, like
exactly.
I know it's a GIF now and all that, but like that's frightening. When you see him, you close out and he's just standing there with them eyes.
He's like, "What's up?" He's like, "What's up, man?" Like,
yeah,
like, because like the reason I call it a horror movie is because like horror is all about tension, and it's all about like building to a point where there's like a big release that's like a scare. And you think about the way Bishop gets the gun and he moves around, and then he starts following Omar Epps, and they have that run at the end of the movie. And then when he gets in the scene where he gets in the elevator,
what you gonna do? Shoot me the elevator?
Exactly. And Bishop walks in forward and doesn't turn around, and then he just like, that's horror shit. Like,
yep. Like anything horrifying. Can happen. You're right. Like
yeah.
I remember seeing that for the first time, thinking, "Oh yeah." When he says right to his face, "What are you gonna do? Shoot me in the elevator?" And I was like, "That's kind of cool." And he's like, "Actually," and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like that is a horror. Like Michael Myers is at your door. You're looking at him through the window. Of course, he's gonna break through the window to get you. That's not gonna stop him. He doesn't care. You know what I mean? He wants. Like it's like what's the name always said, this one sports writer I love, he talked about Terminator. He was like, Terminator's so ill, the first one, and definitely the first one. He was like, the Terminator wants to kill you more than you want to stay alive.
Right. Like, see,
Bishop's like, I will kill you. Like, how much do you stay alive? Because I'll let off in the elevator full 10 people. That's how much I want to kill you.
And he literally says it to him at the locker. He's like, I don't care about you. I don't care about our friends. And I don't care about myself. And like, I don't even care about myself. So if I decide that you're like I'm not worth shit. So the second that I determine that you're not worth shit, you're dead. Like, yo, that's something, like, wow.
You're right, dude. You're right.
Yeah. Oh man, once again, I'm yelling. I'm trying to calm down. I got really excited just now. But
yeah, don't apologize.
Yeah. But yeah, man, like Juice is, yeah, like going back and watching it again, like a lot of the dialogue is like extra corny, but the rest of the movie is great. Like it's
you know what, story, it's a great movie. It's a documentary, Rhyme and Reason. That really blew my mind too. So Rhyme and Reason is probably like 96. It's a rap documentary, and it's just all about like rappers in the industry and what that is like for them. So they interview Biggie, they interview Wu-Tang, they interview the Alcoholics.
Oh no, I've never seen this. I've heard of it though. Yeah, that's crazy.
Guru. It's an amazing. I used to watch that over and over because there was the show. The show was amazing too. Like I used to watch that, be blown away because you're watching like Biggie and Wu, like brand new artists, Warren G, like they're doing a show, and then Run DMC does a set. So that was amazing just to watch them perform. Like I used to just watch their performances. It was like watching, like studying film, like from a sporting point of view, like watching game tape. I would just watch how they performed and what they would do, and like how Method Man would move on stage. He had a leather jacket on and like his voice. And then watching Wu, like how they were touring, and then Rhyme and Reason is just like being with people in the studio, being with them in their hood, and like them telling you like this is how the industry works. Here's what's tricky about it. Here's like the things you have to navigate. And it's really, really cool because it's not about like the flash anymore. It's like, okay, now it's a job. What does that look like in 1995, 96 versus the
Right.
show being like, isn't it amazing to be on stage? Holy shit. So I highly recommend Rhyme and Read. That was a big movie for me too. I like watched it on VHS so many. I have the soundtrack somewhere too. It's great.
I've had a couple people tell me about it. I gotta tap in. I've been meaning to,
It's
so
great.
I'm gonna do that now that you said it. Um,
Fantastic.
man, and that's actually a great segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is
But
like your career, which has been going for quite a while. But the first place I came in to hearing Zilla Rocca was when you put out Future Former Rapper in
oh, nice.
2018. Like that was when
Beautiful.
I was like, oh, who's this? And just like the whole idea of like being a future former rapper and like being
Right.
on the verge of like I'm not doing this shit no more. Like it's crazy to me. Like it's crazy and also ironic considering where you've gone over the course of the last three
Right.
years. So like I
Right.
was just curious, like where was your head at when you first put out that album? Like especially compared to some of the stuff that you had put out earlier. Like were you really like was it really at that point where you were like I can't do this anymore? Or was
Yeah.
it just
Yeah. Cause I just didn't think it was gonna keep going. So I was just like, well, at the time, I just got married. We had just bought a house and like my wife, boom, got pregnant. Like all this stuff happened very quickly
oh
and it
wow.
wasn't planned out like to all cascade that way. So I was like, well, if I'm going to be a dad, like I can't really do music anymore. It's pretty much going to be over. So let me make this album. And I just was like calling in favors from everybody I knew. And I was just like, I've done a lot of stuff up until this point. Let me just like show every style I've done and can do. And this will be like my farewell, and that's cool. And I'm okay with that. So that was pretty much the idea behind it. And I wanted to put a lot of different aesthetics together. So like Steel Tip Dove back then, who I didn't know very well, he's kind of like the most important person on the record because he's the bridge between like Small Professor and then like Ray West and then even Disco Vietnam. Like they're more sample based kind of traditional East Coast guys with what I pick. And then
Right.
Dove was like sampling like weird ambient records and like weird electronic shit. And so I had a lot of music like that in the past, people to know about me. And then I got my man Starkey to do a song on there called Name on the Buckle. He and I used to be in a group. He's a big producer doing like EDM, IDM, like overseas, everywhere. He's huge. And then my man Bill, he did this song, Make the Sickness Sell the Cure when me and Castro, he works for Kid Cudi full time. So these are people with a lot of different style backgrounds. And I was like, I'm going to put them all together and then this will be like, hey, here's the things I wanted to do, I plan to do, like Messiah Music, like all those people I just always want to work with. And I'm like, okay, they're all here, I'm out, like goodbye. And
Right.
so I dropped it, and POW, shouts to Jeff Weiss, they love the record and they put it out.
Shout out to Jeff.
Um, yeah, man, and it just I did it. So after I did it, and I settled into a new rap dad life, I just started finding being like, all my friends just kept getting hotter and doing this doper shit. And I just sat there and I was like, man, I could do this shit. This person sent me a bunch of beats. I could probably still do some shit. And I just had the itch and I just kind of got in a good space again. And I just kept it going, but I didn't really plan on it. It wasn't like, I didn't think I would be doing this shit right. I thought I would just be like, a dad, and like listening to music and loving it and talking about it. But I really didn't think I'd be, an active creator. So that was really what happened with that record. I'm glad people like it.
Yeah, like you're still here, and that's
Yeah.
uh, and that's really remarkable. And like you've only you've grown more prolific. Like there's more stuff. Like you
Yeah. There's a
just
lot.
you always got something coming out, and I'm happy you mentioned all the homies because like of course I had Prem Rock on here a couple months ago and we
Yeah. My
talked
man.
extensively about a
That was a
lot of
great one.
things.
That was a great
Yeah,
interview. Wow.
thank you, thank you, thank you,
It was
thank you.
great.
Yeah, that was honestly one of my favorites we've done. He and I, like, he was so gracious, just like you've been so gracious, like
Oh, thanks, man.
so you mentioned Wrecking Crew a few times,
Mhm.
and I'm curious, like I talked to Prem about this, but I was kind of curious to hear the Wrecking Crew story from your perspective and kind of
Sure.
how it came together and what the group means to you.
Yeah, man. So it was me and Castro. sorry, it was me, Castro, and Small Pro. So at one point, all three of us had the same manager, and he managed a couple other cats. So we would like all kind of hang out at his crib, and like we started doing a lot of shit together. So I had a relationship with Small Pro. I had a relationship with Castro. All of a sudden, we're under the same management. We go to the same shows and working on the same people's records and doing stuff. Um, and then we started like making it more of a thing. And so I think I'm pretty sure Castro's like the name guy. He comes up with the name. So I'm pretty sure he came up with it. I hated it because I was like, this is played out. There's there's fucking a bunch of softball teams called Wrecking Crew. Like, what the fuck is that? You know what I mean? And then there's like the band, the Wrecking Crew. And I was like, ah. And they're like, nah, like fucking Juice Wrecking Crew. I'm like, sure, fine. So then that just became the name. And then over time, it got more and more refined. And then we met Prem and we started rolling with Prem. And Prem was just around all the time too. Like we would go do shows in New York, he'd come to Philly, we would do a bunch of run dates. And so it was like Wrecking Crew and Prem Rock. Like Prem was like the outer guy. And then after a while, it was just like, yo, everything just works so well. Like us four really just clicked the most. Like we had other people around, but it was always like pulling teeth or just, it wasn't like the right fit. So we just kind of like let those people move on. And we said to Prem, like, you should just be down with us, bro, like officially, because you're the coolest fucking guy. And you're a stand-up person and you make great stuff and you work and you make music too. And so I think it really boiled down to like all of us bring value. So Castro brings value on what he does, Prem, me, Small Pro, and we all got different things going on. We all live in different places now, but it's like the last couple of years of saying it and putting logos on it and making compilations and the podcast, do all stuff. It's like people now, it means something, but to me it's meant something this whole time, you know, like it's not like a new thing for me, but it's a new thing for more people, which is cool. So it's really like about being friends first, but also like friends that work hard with each other and on their own. And if we're full of shit, we tell each other, you know. It's
right.
if you're acting up in a way that's not really helpful, we're going to let you know. Likewise, if your thing needs some more work, we'll let you know. If you need advice on something, we'll let you know. If you just want to talk about whatever, basketball or your girl, whatever's going on, it can be open. It's not just like some like, you know, industry created thing to gather momentum. You know, like the momentum came years after we started saying it. So that kind of came very organically. But, you know, I just love being a part of it. And I love more and more people that discover me or discover Prem or Shrapnel or Small Pro or whoever, or even Alaska, you know, who's like our satellite member now. And then it pulls them in, like how you were saying about Doom was a gateway drug for a lot of other shit. I feel like that is happening now more and more with us. Like someone discovers Shrapnel, they discover our podcast, boom, they discover me, they discover Small Pro. So it's a really cool thing because it's there if people want it. You know what I mean? We're not like, we don't have a, you know, a big artist management company with a $500,000 budget to market and do all those things. We do work on marketing, but it's like, it's something where when people catch it, they lock in and start backtracking. Like our back catalog orders every month are hitting because people find out about us and then they go find Future Former Rapper. They go find Castro's record, Tosh. They go find Clean Well Lighted Place from Prem or Small Pros, a million beat tapes. And they kind of see like what the connective pieces are and how everything, like there's always little couplings we do with each other. So a lot of it's based on Wu-Tang, a lot of it's based on Doom, a lot of it's based on Blueprint, who's given us a lot of inspiration as a friend and as just an artist we love. But now it's more like, okay, people like it, people want it, like people want to see what's happening. So like, let's give it to them. You know what I mean? Like let's not be like Mysterio. Let's really say, here's this, here's that. You like that? This is coming 3 months later. Here's something 5 months from now. Like there's a lot lined up there. Like we're not stopping. Like,
right.
But this is who we were before. That's my point, is like we were doing this in 2010, 2013. Just no one was really caring, which is cool because, you know, we're killing it in obscurity. And then now there's a little bit more light on us, which is great.
And now people get it, you know, and like, yeah, like y'all have the network, like right. It's like the network is the marketing. Like you don't need that. Right. Like you're reaching people, you know, like, right. and that's like it's just this like network that's been kind of feeding into itself for 10 years and it's finally
right
stretching out
slow,
type
man.
shit, you know,
like, it's slow. Like Prem brings a New York satellite audience, then he brings a global audience because he's toured overseas a lot, right? And then, you know, on my end it was more like I used to be on blogs heavy. I had like more of like an internet collection of people that rock with me. And then Small Pro has like the beat maker dudes, but then he has albums with Guilty Simpson and Sean Price, like fat beats type of cats that just love a certain style of rap. He can bring them in the mix, you know what I mean? And then Castro can bring like sci-fi, sports, Afrocentricity, like politics. He can bring that in, and then like live show off the head. Like he's won people over just being on stage with 1 million people over time. Like Castro's been on stage with, if he really ran down a list of every person he's ever just performed with, not like, oh, I'm booked to play with such and such. Like, no, I was on stage being their hype man. I've seen him do more hype man shows than solo shows. So Castro's like mastered like the live setting where he can win you up. So it's like everyone can do those things, and then bringing it back, you know, funnel it into the same landing place of like, hey, it's this logo, it's this name, it's these guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I saw yeah, you know, speaking of that, I saw Castro do hype man shit during the Arm & Hammer Alchemist show. Like that, like that's wow, you know, like that show was really
that's
amazing.
How he got in the game. Castro wanted to be a hype man. He didn't want to be a solo rapper. He wanted to be a hype man.
Wow. I could tell he's really good at that shit. He's great at rapping too. But like, you know, like that, I love Castro, man. Shout out to Castro, and shout out to Small Pro too, because yeah, I've been meaning to say that. Like, love the beats. Like Small Pro's been going crazy forever. Like, yeah, it's like y'all have a really great little collective going on, and like, and, you know, like that. And of course, and you know, like that expands to Callout Culture, the podcast. So like, talk to me, like where did the idea go from y'all just making music and kind of having this network of fans for that to being like, we need to have a podcast and talk about this shit? Like,
honestly, it was just having conversations separately with Alaska, and then me and Castro are best friends. We talk every single day on the phone, every fucking day. So I would always say to him, like, bro, like people should hear these convos we have. They're fucking hilarious. Or even when he and I disagree, we just start yelling at each other and shit. Right. So I was having those convos with him, and then I was texting with Alaska, and Alaska and Castro only knew each other as like collaborators. Like they didn't know each other as homies yet. And so I was like, yo, like what if we did it? And I think it was going to be me and Alaska first. And I was like, no, I said Castro needs to be a part of it too. I can't remember, but we were basically, me and Alaska were going to do an album which became Cargo Cults, but we were going to call it Callout Culture. That was going to be the name of the group. So we started to do a podcast. He's like, we should name the fucking podcast Callout Culture. That would be funny if the podcast is the name of the group too, and then the album, everything's just be called that. And I'm like, that's funny. So then we started doing it, and it was just like I had been listening to podcasts since like 2007, 2008. I was always the fan, and I was always like trying to get on people's podcasts because I love them so much, and I love talking, so that works. And then once we did it, you know, we just got disciplined, like just doing it every week, all the time. And then people started listening, engaging with us, and then we were like, oh, no one's talking about Accountable Ox. We should be the ones that do that shit. Or like, no one's talking about this or that, or, you know, bringing on people that we're friends with, that people really enjoy, and then also reaching out to people we love that we don't really know yet. It's helped us build a community of people we all just knew separately. So like me knowing like Cryptic One now, that's through Alaska, him being on the show, or like Gang, like that's through Alaska. But then Alaska got to meet like Griff, that they just did an album. He met him through me, I knew him Griff for 15 years. So it's like, we all just piece him. And then Castro's like, oh, I'll get Woods on, I'll get Arm & Hammer on, you know, like right. I'm going to see them Friday, you know, I'll get them on to come on. So it's like all of us pulling in each other's friends and acquaintances, and then here and there, like getting like absolute heroes to come on the show, like, you know, Breeze Bruin, or we're trying to get a couple other big name people on the show here and there. But it's like, it's all like culminated really well. And then those guys become each other. We've become friendly with those people. Like it's really interesting to see where it goes. And then, you know, being lucky to have a Patreon and people want to support it, you know, and check for us like that. And we do a lot of exclusives. So it's like, it feels good. It feels good to have a community of people from all over the world, different ages and backgrounds, that listen to it, are excited about it, want to come on the show, or suggest people. You know, like this week we had one dropping about the Wu-Tang show, and then we had Midas the Beast. And I've known of these dudes for years and years, but I never really met them or talked to them like that. So we just had them on the show along with Cryptic One, all just talking about Wu-Tang on Hulu and having a blast. So like it kind of introduces us to each other, and it's cool to see what comes up out of it too. Like some people just start doing shit together and start making records and collaborate. And so it's really fun, man. Yeah, I love it. It's one of my favorite parts of every. It's a lot of work, but like doing a podcast, but it's really fun. It's a great, especially
Yeah.
during COVID. Like it's a great way to connect with people that love what you love.
Yeah, yeah, really. Like that that's all facts. You just said a mouthful. Like
Mhm.
just like having that ecosystem is so valuable. Like not even just like not even just like as an
No,
artist, but just like as
right,
a just like as someone just doing fun shit, like
right,
it's just
yeah.
good to have that. Like
So I hope you just got that real quick.
yeah, I just got it. So
Okay, cool.
so there's a couple more things I
Sure.
want to talk to you about. So, like talking about this ecosystem thing, I'm another person in your periphery, or not even periphery, like you worked with them hardcore, DJ Chong Wizard, my
Yeah.
man, your man, like all this type of shit. So like, I love the Midnight Suns album y'all
Ah,
dropped.
thanks, man.
What was that, last year, right?
Yeah, last October. It's almost a
Yeah.
year old.
So wow, Jesus. So like real
I
quick,
know.
like I mean, like, like I'm big on the Midnight Suns, like the group in Marvel. I'm big on the
Yeah.
on the Marvel Zombies books, and seeing the iteration in
Whew.
there was just super dope. So like talk to me about your relationship with Chong Wizard real quick.
Yeah.
And then from there we can just jump into Vegas Vic and touch
Yo,
on like two more things.
sweet. Yeah. So me and Chong was just connected like years ago. I recorded a verse that he paid someone to do for him. And I always liked, he had a mixtape called like American Iron Man years ago where he put Jay-Z instrumentals over like Ghostface beats, or vice versa. Jay-Z acapellas over Ghostface, or Ghost over Jay. I can't remember. But I remember the artwork, no one was using like comic book artwork back then. I was like, oh, this guy knows his shit. And then we just kind of like met each other again on Twitter like 4 or 5 years ago. And at the time, my avatar was Moon Knight. And he said something like, "Oh, I love your avatar." I'm like, "Bro, no one knows who the fuck this is. Like, you're the first person to compliment me." And this is
Shout
like
out
the
to Moon
Warren
Knight.
Ellis run of Moon Knight. So then we just started kicking it. And then he was pumping out a lot of shit, and he asked me to be on one of his projects, the last mixtape. It was like a Star Wars joint. Um, and then I just started doing verses, and they had a lot of comic book references in them. Then me and Castro get on songs. So he was cranking it, and we were cranking it. And he was just like, "Yo, I got a bunch of beats. Like, we should do some shit, like based on like all this shit we like." So then that's how Midnight Suns came to pass. It probably took like 2 years or something to make that record, but it was like him decided to make all the beats and like pick the sample choices he wanted, and then the artwork, and then all the packaging we went through, and then the logo. And it was like the most involved thing I've ever. It took very long, and it was great. And I got to check off a lot of bucket list cats working with, like Malik B, rest in peace, and Nature, and Demark Vesey, on top of all my guys, Woods, and all that, Lord Juco. But that was really and the J Zone samples we had with his blessing. So it worked out really well. And then the success of that record, he was like, "Well," I was like, "Dude, I got another solo album sitting on Vegas Vic." And he's like, "Let me hear it." So I sent it along, and it was the total opposite. Not one producer and not big name guests. It was like all my friends that I just wanted to work with. And so he loved it, and he was like, "Hey, I'll put it out." And I was like, "Shit." So we're still waiting on vinyl now, but that's going to be like my first ever like purely solo vinyl release.
Wow.
So that's really cool. I mean, it's the shit. And like that record was just me making songs, because all my friends were just, again, cranking the wheel, like getting busy, and I'm being impressed with what they're making. I'm like, I'm not going to just sit here on the sidelines, bro. Like, you're not going to keep lapping me. Like, I need to do some songs. So
Right.
that record came together pretty quickly. Then COVID and all that stuff, it kind of slowed some shit down, but he believed in that record too. So that came out like end of July. And Chong's great, man. Chong is very, very skilled at managing a project of music. Like, how are we going to drop it? Who should be on it? What does the design look like? What's the packaging like? Like, he's a masterful, like, visual salesman, you know what I mean? And he's really good at knowing like how to present things and push things in a way and get people excited, and who to trust, what moves to make, like from like a label side, like the manufacturing, shipping. Like, it's a lot of work, and he does it really
Yeah.
well. And so it's stressful, and you don't always make as much as you think based on the work you put into it. But he's built his brand where like people trust him to do something really, really thoughtful and cool. The same way, like, for Wrecking Crew, like, people kind of believe in us. So it's just like anything else. It's like you just keep slowly doing it nonstop to where people believe in you and they trust you.
Right. And like it's easy to take all of that into consideration when you listen to a project like Vegas Vic, because of how like, I mean, like your music has always been fairly personal, but like this is like hearing like a song like the title track or even like $5 God, like these are just like you just kind of like laying out your life in a way that, not to say that you haven't before, but it's just kind of like continuing the streak of you just kind of giving yourself to people. And it feels, and like the air is different around it because this is your first, like, you like talk about like the first pure vinyl solo release type of thing. And like, you know, I just wanted to say, I really think this is a great, like solid, thorough project that really,
Thanks,
I
man.
really feel like it's a showcase in the same way that like Future Former Rapper was. Like
Thanks, man.
It's less sonically varied, but it's still like, it's still in that same, this just feels like a, hey, like this is what I'm doing, this is where I came from. But it's almost like the inverse, right? Like it's just like you're on the verge of quitting, and now it's like, oh, we're just getting started now, like you know. So like,
that's a great point. I never thought of that.
So, you know, like, I guess to wrap this up, like as someone who's flirted with leaving the game behind, you know, and enough times to really kind of give this some weight, like how does it feel to, you know, in 2021, like in the middle of a fucking global pandemic, like look back and see how prolific you've become in the face of like, oh, I'm a quit. And now it's like you're putting out vinyl with Chong Wizard, and like you have a whole network of people and like a podcast. Like how does it feel to see all that you've accomplished?
I mean, you know what? I never really step back and think and like look at it and take it in, because it's always like there's something to do. So you saying that makes me like step back and think about it and be grateful. You know what I mean? Because it's doing it all the time when I wanted all these things to happen all the time, from like 2005 to 2014, like every day. This is all I wanted every day, and everything else took a backseat. So for things that open up after you put in all the time and the money you lose, and relationships that go bad, and going doing shows and no one's there, and like all these things you deal with, it's like to have it culminate in a place where people are excited or anticipating or checking for it. It means a lot, because I know what it's like when no one's caring. You know what I mean? Like just sending shit out into the abyss. So it's cool to have something like that. And then like the work ethic and the being prolific, like that's always been there. Like I've been like this since 05, honestly, like all the time. But now it's just like there's a lot more mediums like podcasts and Zoom and Bandcamp, like things just opened up for artists over time. So it's pretty inexpensive to make it hit, and taking advantage of those things is the key. So if you could take advantage of it, your mailing list, you know, your social media shit online, connecting with people, building things for yourself, all the tools, because these tools weren't here in the past, bro. It was just like you spent a ton of money and you know what the fuck is going to happen. So now you can do it and get a lot of good information, and excuse me, and then find your audience and just satisfy them first. Like no one else really matters. People that don't check for me, I don't care. It would be great if they did. If they do start checking for me, that's fantastic. I got you. But if not, I'm not like hoping, man, I really hope someone likes me over here. And I hope I got to start doing records like this to impress these people. It's like, there's space for everybody now. You know what I mean? You can just find your niche and cater to them and go with it. And then they'll take care of you. And that's it. So that's the hardest part, is like find your audience. But once you do, you're good. You just, as long as you stay consistent, I can't say anything else. It's not really, you know, there's no magic recipe and shit.
Right. You know, like, yeah, like you're like, there's even still that like unpredictable nature of like, you know, like it's less inexpensive, but there's still like, you don't know if it's going to hit, but like you find your people and you just kind of like, you know, work with them and you build from there. And that's that's amazing. Like, it's really amazing. Sweet. You know, like I don't have any more questions. I think we did it. Like,
yeah, we did it, man. I gotta run it. I got a couple other things going on, but I really appreciate you making this time for me.
Z, man, thank you for even being interested. Like, I appreciate anybody, you know, just like you, I appreciate anybody who's like I'm 20, I'm maybe like 20, 30 episodes. I think this is gonna be number 30. Wow, crazy. So like, I'm only 30 episodes into this shit. So like, you even wanting to come on and talk to me, like that means a lot. So thank you. Thanks for listening. Shout out to y'all for making it this far. And shout out to all the Black people listening too, because y'all really impeccable. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell a friend to come through next time. 1.